It has taken me 9 months to get that tutorial out from start to finish. That is the longest time it has ever taken me to do a tutorial, and I sincerely hope it never takes me that long ever again. This has been the hardest tutorial to make because there has been so much going on to get in the way from start to finish. So in the last 9 months, myself and my partner bought our first house and decided to do it up ourselves, which in principle is a great idea, but in practice means loads and loads of leaks, lots of sanding, lots of painting, and a few expletives here and there, and plenty of late nights and long weekends. So as you can imagine, while doing up a house, it wasn't physically possible to be able to record something at the same time. But when we moved in, I really thought I'd be able to get recording. However, I got a new job and that took up loads of mental energy. So when I got to the weekend, to be honest, I was completely shattered and also wanted to spend time with my partner and enjoy our new house and enjoy the new county that we are living in, which, by the way, is absolutely stunning and we're really enjoying it. But this meant that still no recording was happening. This is springtime by now. So I then decided to do up my studio space. I wasn't happy with it, I hadn't done it properly, and I knew that mentally this was really getting in the way for me being able to sit down and record and enjoy making some classes. So I totally redid the room, which I'm now sat in, and I will show you guys this properly at some point, but it involved a little custom wall easel, some storage, some more storage behind over there, some more storage over there, and over there I have a lot of stuff. And then I thought I'd be ready to start recording. So one weekend in summer, I did start recording the blue tip tutorial, finally. And this took quite a long time to get to, just from the point of view of choosing the photos. I cannot tell you guys how long I spent choosing reference photos. It takes forever. So I sit down, I start recording, and then I have to stop, because next door's dogs are outside enjoying the weather, but being fairly vocal about it, and my microphone just wasn't equipped to deal with that. So I have to completely stop and wait several weekends to try again. And this time I managed to get all the way through with a little bit of barking here and there. But then I find that my computer isn't able to edit anymore and I need a new one, and it's just not the right time to be buying a new computer. And so only last month I got a new computer and could finally start looking at all this footage that I had. So I get editing and I get the class together, and now we're on the last day of September. It has taken 9 months to get this class together. I really cannot believe it. But I'm going to share the first 2 full video steps with you here on YouTube. There are 8 steps in total, so you can get a bit of an idea of what this class is about. Now in this class, I use a whole variety of pencils, and as I say, in all of my classes, you do not need to use the right pencils to get these results, but obviously it might be a little bit easier to follow along with it. The first 20 people that buy this class are getting it half price, and that means you can keep the class forever. Or you could just become a member and do it in a month. It's probably a weekend project really, so if your weekend is looking as grim as mine, then it might be quite a nice thing to start doing. So I really hope you guys enjoy the class, and here are the first 2 steps. Welcome to the blue tip tutorial. So if you open up your image, which you'll find in your workbook, then you can follow along with this more easily. I've spent quite a long time looking at this photo, trying to decide where would be best to begin. If we have a look, you can see that there is a very clear shadow down his belly here, and in many ways that's very useful. We have a clear kind of darker side and lighter side to be working to. But the tricky aspect of this drawing is that we have all of the yellow feathers, and yellow isn't a colour that is very comfortable being taken and made darker because it doesn't have a lot of tinting strength, which basically means that the colour disappears. However, we can see that there are dark yellow feathers here. So trying to find a way to bring those into the painting is difficult. We do have some dark yellow-brown colours that I often use, like the 182, which I will just grab a moment. So the 182 is this golden brown here. However, it's not actually appropriate for this drawing because this is a very warm golden brown. So if we look again at the reference photo, you can see that the yellows there are actually quite green. They're very, very cool. So this would be taking our yellow and making it warmer, make it darker, but it would make it warmer, which is completely incorrect. So this is one of the reasons that I've actually opted to go for a dark blue pastel matte paper. You can draw this on whatever coloured paper you like, but for me, I think dark blue is going to work best. And then another thing that I've been thinking about as well is that on the face we have these patches of light grey to put in. And actually, although it's a blue tip and the The yellows are cool, and then we have blues as well, and there are greens in there too. The grey is actually quite a warm grey. However, I'm going to be using some cool greys because of getting the correct tone. So I'm going to be using, I think, the Carbothello Cool Grey number 2, 722. We'll wait and see, but that is my plan at the minute because the tone for that is particularly accurate. So I have spent quite a long time just thinking about where is best to start, going through tone, going through colour theory, and you can see as well the placement of the blue tit. I've gone for a portrait placement, even though the photo is landscape. For me, it sits better and it feels more like a piece of artwork. If we were to go landscape, for me, it feels more like a photograph, which doesn't appeal to me as much. But obviously, if you want to go landscape, then be my guest. So let's get cracking. As per usual, I am going to start with the eyes. Apart from anything else, as I've already been through a few times, this is a tricky one to know where to begin. So let's start with an area that I'm quite familiar with. So I'm taking the 199, the black, and obviously we are working in a really, really small space now. So what I've done here, I know it looks really weird at the minute, I've left a small gap where we have the eye. On that side, the eye is very difficult to see, and it's basically found with a small highlight. So for now, I'm just leaving a gap so that I don't lose it. I'm going to work along the other side. So I'm going to put the light feathers into this, but already I am looking at the photo, just lifting the pencil in the direction that those feathers are going to be traveling in. This can melt straight into the eye. Again, I've left a little crescent there where we're going to have the highlight. And then I'm going to come down the chin here. It joins up into the beak. Because this is such a small drawing, we're not going to be compartmentalising it as much as we would with a larger drawing, because there is no point and it will actually make it a little bit more difficult to see where we're going with it. Again, I'm just lifting the pencil at the edges. It's going to start to give me some texture. And making sure that I'm filling in the centre of that shape. I'm going to actually add some other colours into there as well, believe it or not, just to make it bounce a little bit more. So if you wanted to, you could have put the lighter colours in first. You might be thinking, why isn't she? Partly because I know I trust my pencil control that I can add the lighter colours in, lighter tones in later on. For me, adding in these structures now is going to be more helpful. Because the light and the dark is so pronounced in this drawing. So as I've come around to this edge, you can see that I've stopped with the black because it is so much lighter there. I'm going to pick up the 181 instead, which is your cool dark grey. Soft, fluffy edges. And I can just see a little bit of light grey over here as well. Probably isn't even going to show up on camera that easily. Bring it up around his beak. So already we have a really basic two-tone drawing there that's starting to bring light in, and we're getting an idea of the form very, very quickly, which is why I wanted to start with that first. It gives me a good grounding. I'm going to carry straight on with the rest of the face. I'm going to start with that cool grey I spoke about, Carbothello 722, which I can see has not, it's not actually, there we go, focused, this 722 from Stabilo there. If you don't have this, don't worry. Try using one of the mid-greys lightly instead, 273 or 233. So I'm working this onto the darker side of the face. The Stabilo is quite a soft pencil, so it's going to put pastel down quite readily. And I'm moving my pencil as though I'm already putting details down. This is a small drawing. We haven't got a lot of space. I'm also working on the paper, which is typical for me when I'm doing small drawings, because you can get that final finish quite quickly, especially when I've used something quite strategically here, the dark paper for underneath, because when you look at the photo, you can see quite a few darks poking through the lighter feathers. So it's okay if we have a bit of that showing through in the final drawing. It'll actually be fairly helpful. So up onto his forehead, a little bit of a frown, nothing like a frown the robin can give you. And then a little bit of dark, I think around here too. Honestly, I'm being so soft with this pencil, but because the pencil itself is soft and because it's so much lighter than the tone of the paper, it's going to show up really well. Pop that down and then pick up one of my light greys from Faber-Castell. I've got the 270, could use the 230 too. And again, brushing it on and off the page. Now, I am going over and into the black, but I'm making sure to lift my pencil. You can see there's a little bit of black on the end of the pencil there. So if you need to, you can obviously just wipe your pencil to make sure it's clean. I twist my pencil, which helps, prevents one edge becoming really, really dirty. It just cleans the pencil up as I go. So there are some gaps where I've got the paper showing through. Again, that is really quite intentional because it's acting, the paper is acting as an underpainting for us. A little bit of light on the other side, but obviously not too much because the light is coming in from the left-hand side in this photo. And this photo is from Unsplash. So it's a free photo and there'll be a link to where you can find it. So full credit to our photographer, Valentin. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. There isn't an E on the end, so I'm assuming it's not Valentine. So, tiny white feathers on the face, pretty much done, certainly for a first layer. Already got a lovely texture to him. And then cracking on straight away with the blue crown on his head. Now, I'm going to have a selection of blues to use for this drawing. If you don't have all of them, really do not worry, it's absolutely fine. Use whatever you've got and try and pay more attention to tone, so to the light or dark value of the pencil as opposed to the colour. That will give you a better drawing by the end. So I'm going to start off with the 143. This is to give us a little bit of an underpainting for this section. So you can see it's a really lovely vibrant blue. Tonally, it's lighter than the paper, but not massively, which actually gives it a fairly soft edge as we put it down. I'm just going to pause here a minute and grab my putty rubber. There we go, so I've just got rid of that little bit of outline that was showing with the putty rubber there. I'm going to pick up the blue again and just gently go over the edges of some of that light grey to join the areas together. I love how quickly these drawings start to look really realistic. They're brilliant fun to draw. British garden birds, we've got an absolutely beautiful selection in this country. So if you enjoy doing this one, go and tackle some more. So carrying on with his blue crown, I'm going to pick up a dark blue, the 151. If you haven't got this one, then maybe you'll have the 157, which at this very moment evades me. It was in front of me. Here we go. And it will look almost grey on screen. It's a really dark indigo, so do be careful with it. You can see that they are both very dark pencils though. So I'm using the 151. And now I'm going to be mindful to follow the direction of the feathers here. I'm being very, very light. Just adding a few feathery strokes. Well, really, this is like drawing fur, to be honest. And if you want a bit more detail on drawing fur and you'll remember, then you'll have access to a fur masterclass that's in with the Fox tutorial. There's a half-hour class just about drawing fur in with the Fox tutorial, the mother and the cub. So if you are a member, then you've got access to that. So if you want a little bit of help with drawing fur and a bit more of a deep dive into it, then definitely head into that class. Okay, so you can see I've left gaps. You You can also see I headed in more heavily on the right hand side because of course that is the side that hasn't got direct light hitting it. And then I'm going to go over with the 140. Now, if possible, the 140 would be a really good pencil to have for this tutorial, but only for this section. It's this section that is really going to help you. So again, make sure it's nice and sharp before you begin. And then you can be really, really light, and we are going to go in just as we did before, brushing it on and off the page. Now I'm taking some of these markings off and out a little bit. It's softening the edge. Weave a couple very carefully into that light grey as well. There we go, so he's already got a blue crown. I'm not saying I won't go back and fiddle with that, because more than likely I will. We haven't actually done anything to the beak or the highlights on the eyes at the moment, so before we finish this part of the face for now, because we will definitely be coming back to it, I'm just going to take my mid-grey to start with. I'm using the 273, you could also use the 233, and I'm carefully just going to add the highlight onto both eyes. Now you can see that you really will need a sharp pencil to put that in. They are really tiny markings. And likewise, I'm going to just shade in the beak. And then go over both of those with a light grey. So on the left-hand side, just adding a small highlight to the beak, literally just put a tiny little dash in there. Honestly, so small. And then only on the left eye do I go in, and at the top add a brighter highlight. So I'll return to the face on another step because we can add more detail and more depth into that. But that's a really good start, and it's very quick to achieve that result by using this dark paper on a small scale drawing. Right, so I'm going to carry on down to the yellow of the body. Now, I'm right-handed, so arguably it would make more sense to go and work on the wings next. But this section is the section that I think is going to be hardest, and it's also going to add volume to the body, so I want to get that section in next. So obviously I'm going to need my crystal paper pretty early on in this drawing. Now, as I've already said, we've got the dark blue paper, and we can see the dark blue paper is showing through, dark blue is showing through between his golden feathers on the photograph, so it's incredibly useful. We've basically already got half of our underpainting done for us. But it goes a step further than that as well, because as much as this is similar to what I would have put down for an underpainting, it also means that because it's paper, it can't mix with the light yellows that are going on top of it, which is incredibly useful when you are using pencils that don't have a strong tint to them and will quickly become muddied. Something that we do need to note, however, is that as we work with our light pastel pencils over dark pastel paper, and particularly the paper, not the board, if you add too many layers, it can actually start to crumble off. You can't get it to go back on again. And then you just get a really grainy finish to your drawing. So I'm quite careful with how many layers I put on and how hard I press. If you're not sure yet what that feels like, then treat this as a practice. Have some scrap paper as well so that you can do little trials of each step, and you will start to see what I mean about you get to this point where you've added too much pastel and the paper starts to show back through. You add more and it almost rubs off the top layer, particularly with the lighter colours, it's quite apparent. So as I was saying at the beginning, we've got this conundrum down here where the yellow needs to be darker, but yellow doesn't have a strong tinting power, and it's a cool yellow. The Faber-Castell set gives us the 182, which is a really warm dark yellow. It's a brown, but a golden yellow brown. We don't have the same for a green yellow, so we're going to have to be a little bit inventive. I'm going to start with the 167, which is a green, and I'm going to be fairly light with it. And using the pencil on the side, because of course using it on the side means it's going to be softly applied, I'm going to shade in the dark plane. Now making sure all of this has sharp edges, soft edges, not sharp edges. And then over the top of this, I'm going to take the 182 and gently glaze that in. It's bringing a bit of yellow back, but there is still green poking through underneath. So I'm going to do that a couple of times. So I'm taking my green again, the 167. This isn't really a pencil I've used very often, to be honest. I tend not to do too many florals with pastel pencils, so there isn't often need of such a lurid green unless I'm doing exotic birds usually. But in the case of the blue tit, we get a really fantastic range of colours. And then the 182 again. So what this is doing, although we are putting down a warm yellow, it's undeniable, we have also put down a green, and because I'm glazing them together, we're getting what can be called an optical mix. So we are mixing a new colour, but I've got literal patches of green that are still green poking through, and then I've got patches of this. So we kind of get this bouncing effect, and the colours are mixed together by our eye, as opposed to mixed together like wet paint to create a new colour. Again, just glazing back over with the green. And then the 182. And you can see I'm just muddying this edge up here together as well. I don't want a gap between the black and the body. I'm just going to bring this over a little bit more. We've got details over here and we have actually got yellows, but I'd quite like some of this fore and underpainting. It's lovely to use colours and pencils in new ways. I've been drawing with pastel pencils for about 5 years now, but I've never had a need to mix these two colours together, and they've actually come together so nicely to create a really interesting colour and pattern on the page. So that area is by no means finished. So from there, I'm going to take the 157, which again, 157 when it's laid down just looks like a black or a grey. It's quite difficult to pick it out. And then you can just see the dark stripe poking out slightly. Now, arguably it's early to put in a detail such as this, but I need to put it in to see how the tone sits with the underpainting that I've put down. So you can see I've not put that in as a straight line. I've literally feathered the edge. And then I'm going to take the 184. Now this is a warm yellow, but again, tonally, this is what I need in here. And I'm just going to very, very lightly, so these aren't really details exactly, this is like a very soft glaze. I'm just going to head over this section, which I can see in the photo is picking up reflected light. I'm going to use it like a blending tool around the edge of the 157, that dark stripe. So although I'm sort of using it like I would to draw fur and feathers, I'm not actually lifting my pencil very high off the page, being purposefully lazy with it, so it's almost scumbling the marks I've made back in again. It's almost mixing itself as I go along. So you can see that's adding some nice texture. I've still got that all-important green poking through here and there as well, which is helping to keep this colour a little bit cooler than it would ordinarily be. So the marks up here are far, far smaller. You can see that the underpainting and the detail layers, they kind of work together simultaneously. When a painting is this small, as I keep saying, we can't add as many layers. So the detail layers are important to get that tonal structure correct as well. So still working into this section, I'm now taking the 172, which is like a sage green, and I'm working this around the area where we've got that stripe. I'm not adding as many strokes of this green in. Tonally, it's pretty much the same as what we've already got down, so it won't stand out in terms of tone too much. But obviously it's helping to cool those colours because it's a blue-green. And it's also showing that slightly cooler light that we have hitting the bird, the reflected light from this side. So I'm using this for those slightly lighter downy feathers that we can see at the bottom. Gently brushing it on and off the page. And I am using it around the edge of that dark stripe. So let's actually add some yellow to our bird now, and the yellows that I want to use. So 106, this is going to be our darkest yellow. Now this isn't strictly a cool yellow, but it's not a warm yellow either. I would say this is a medium yellow, especially how it behaves on this paper. So I'm going to start to use this around the edge of his ruff, and you can see how tiny these marks are. I'm leaving plenty of space and the pencil is sharp. You're using this for a detail layer here because I want to use the blue of the page for our underpainting. So I'm thinking about the planes of light. This is dark and here it's turning into the light. So I'm using this pencil to transition from the unlit plane, the front of the body, into the side, which is catching light. I've probably turned it a little bit too early, to be honest, but I can always go back in and adjust that. So again, keep having a look at the photo because the length of the feathers and the lay of the feathers changes continually. So we really want to try and be as accurate as possible because it's going to help with the overall 3D form of the bird. So I'm twisting my pencil while I'm using it, which is helping to keep it a little bit sharper. I'm then getting a tone lighter by using the 104. So these are colours that I really never have much reason to use, but against this dark blue paper they work so well. So this is where you also need to be mindful that adding too much of a good thing, it's going to start to rub the yellow back off the page and we'll just be left with the dark blue of the page underneath. So do think about where you're putting your marks because we don't want to have to be going over this too many times. Now you can see I'm roughly stopping them about here because this area we can't see the dark blue poking through, so I'm going to have to treat it a little bit differently. So keeping this pencil in my hand for now, I'm going to take the 104 and lightly glaze it over the back of the blue tit, just lightly. Likewise, I'm then going to pick up the 102 And I'm going to use the 102 really, really softly, just to bring some of that downy feathers, those downy feathers, to the back of his leg. Now look at the photo there, because the feathers aren't sat in one clump. There are actually two almost stripes is the best way to describe it, that you can see. So we can see a little bit of the dark yellow showing through, and then there's another stripe, if you like, of the lighter yellow again. So that's going to help prevent it being too flat, and it also shows the way the bird is turning and his little legs. So I'm really brushing the pencil on the page when I'm doing that. Want to avoid as much manual blending, if you like, having to go in and tamper with this. We want to avoid that as much as possible. It's a small space to work in, and it can quickly get muddied. So I'm still working with the 102. I'm looking for the light areas. And they start up here, so I'm weaving them into the more lurid yellows at the top. And then carefully adding some details. As with the face, we're going to get this like half finished and then leave it, and we'll come back to it on another step when we have the rest of the bird filled in. That's going to help us finish off the transitions here and decide if the lightest lights are bright enough, and likewise for the darkest darks. So we're going to need some greys back here for sure, but I'm going to leave that for the next step. So I'm going to leave the yellow body as it is for now. It's a really good start. We have different colours that are going on that need to be pulled together a little bit better. We also need some cooler tones at the back of the bird, but overall we have the dark and we have the light and we have mid-tone, which is exactly what we need for an underpainting, even though this is far more detailed than your normal underpainting, because again, it's a small area to work in. So we're going to do something similar now for the back of the bird.